Alright, welcome back, and continuing from my point of view immediately from where we left off, we are up to Psycho 16, which is crosswork, a repeat of Wimpy 1, 50 lemmings. You can lose 2 here, and that's sort of just a nicety thing. Sometimes the time limit will cut you a lemming or 2 short. The main problem here is like you can't lose enough lemmings to bomb through these walls, and you've only got 1 basher. So basically what it comes down to that you've got to patch up his route with builders so that he keeps bashing the whole way across. And basically the whole level is built around this trick, I guess. That's really all there is to this level, so it's one of those ones that's, I don't know, it could be a bit tricky to realise what you've got to do, definitely tricky to execute. So now we're on to level 17, which is Meeting Spot. It's a repeat of, I think it was Wimpy 5, one of the Wimpy levels anyway. So you've got 20 lemmings, you can only lose two of them here. You've only got 1 builder, so obviously you can't just come back this side, build across this gap, especially since I think these guys would need a platform as well. These guys definitely would. So basically it's a matter of well-placed skills to get lemmings together, and then come down to the exit. The original pre-Neo Lemmings version had some space up the right that you could come into and get together using the builder on that side. That's removed in the newer version. The save requirement's also higher, which I think would have excluded that solution anyway. And on to level 18, Return of the Tea. This one's a cheapo remake. It's also a repeat of Medi 2. And this is one of my favourite of my created levels. So it's 25 lemmings, 100% to save, and as you can see, very limited skill set here. So it's another case of having to use miners to get lemmings upwards. You've also got to come outwards from the middle of this block here. The other thing to be aware of though is you've only got 1 floater, so even though you've got 2 climbers, you can only afford for one of them to end up climbing up that. But in the original cheaper version it was a bit trickier. In this version, if you actually just let this guy keep mining, he'll eventually hit the one-way wall and go back. And this guy here, his bash out the left side will let the crowd through. And time limit is pretty tight. But yeah, so on to level 19, A Perfect Nightmare. It's another 100%er, second of 300% levels in a row. This one's probably the nicest of them, although it does have 1 trick up its sleeve. Actually no, maybe it's not that nice really. So you've got to use a blocker to stop the lemmings going up here, but you've also got to patch up this gap because you can't leave the blocker there due to the 100% requirement. And beyond that, you've also got these flames here, so there's no way you can come down here. So the trick is actually you build in the digger pit to contain them and have 2 lemmings drop through. One of them builds a platform, one of them bashes under here towards the exit. And once that's done, you release them. You want to try and do it so that you get lessen the fall here a bit as well. And once you're under, it's just a walk to the exit. Most of this part is just decorative, including this bridge here, although one point of this bridge is that you can't just bash straight through. Not that it matters since you'd lose your basher anyway. On to level 20, which is No Time to Die. So this is a remake of an unreleased cheapo level. It was from the cheapo Lemmings Plus 4, which, so yeah, the cheapo packs were also called like Lemmings Plus. There wasn't Lemmings Plus 1, it was just Lemmings Plus, but then there was Lemmings Plus 2, Lemmings Plus 3. Main differentiation is the Lemmings or Neo-Lemmings based ones use Roman numerals rather than normal numbers, Arabic numerals I think they're called. But yeah, this was from the never released Lemmings Plus 4. And the basic idea here is that you've got plenty of skills well, sort of, but you've got a really tight time limit, so what it mainly comes down to is you've got to construct multiple parts of the level at once. Getting lemmings to come up here is one way to handle that. And as you can see, you've sort of spaced these out because these lemmings will do different tasks towards completing the level. And so even with a very well optimized solution, you're not going to have more than, I think in the best of cases you can get about 15 seconds left on the time limit. And that level, the no time to die, 9 of each skill, 100%, 99 release rate, multitasking, short time limit level, has actually become a recurring theme throughout Lemmings Plus. I mean, there's actually, in Lemmings Plus 1, there's a no time to die part 2 a little bit later on in Psycho. And then Lemmings Plus 2 also has such a level. Lemmings Plus 3 doesn't in its main pack, but there's a no time to die type level in the bonus pack. But anyway, on to level 21, Kamikaze, which is a repeat of one of the Wimpy levels. I think it was Wimpy 4. So 80 lemmings, and can only lose 5 of them, I think. And you've only got bombers, builders, and a single floater. Previously, before Neolemmings, you had a blocker, which was obviously here, but since you can now have a left-facing entrance in Neolemmings, that's no longer necessary. So the basic idea is that you've got to find ways to get the lemmings together, get platforms, etc. with the very limited skills and very limited spare lemmings. The exit up here is purely a decoy. I don't think it's even possible to get one lemming to that exit, let alone a significant number of them. So on to level 22, which is Twins, repeat of Medi 28. And we've got 80 lemmings, 97% to be saved, so this time we can't just make all of them climbers. We don't have enough climbers for that. What we can do, we have some builders, not quite enough to get there, so it's sort of like a meet in the middle between building up and using alternate bashes and diggers down. And then a little finish off with a reverse miner here. This is actually one of the easier Psycho levels. In the pre-Neolemmings version, this level was originally thought to be impossible to get 100% on, and very shortly before this pack was moved to Neolemmings, a 100% solution was found. That solution used a lot of glitches, which means the move to Neolemmings has once again made 100% impossible. 98%, however, I believe is possible. Now on to level 23 of Psycho, which is Death Row. Originally it was the framework. Now this was a never released one, so it's not in pre-V7 anywhere. But if you remember Find a Way Out from Danger 24, that was an earlier version of the framework. And the reason the framework was removed is because it had way too many back routes. Now ironically, Death Row also ended up having a hell of a lot of back routes, so I guess Psycho 23 was just a sort of cursed position. Now the move to Neolemmings has finally made the intended solution enforceable, which is basically that you compress the lemmings with a digger pit when you release them. And it also involves some very tricky close placement with the steel here. So releasing them is basically done with a climber digging away part of the steel, releasing the blocker, and the idea is you lose as few lemmings as possible in traps. So it's possible to save one more lemming than required. Now I've tried so many different things to try and get more than that. Like theoretically you'd think you should get 92%, but no, in practice it is just not possible to do that. So now on to level 24, which is Gone in a Flash. 20 lemmings, 75% to be saved. Repeat of Wimpy 23 here. And this level, does involve one very unusual trick, which is, oh, I needed to replay for the wrong level there, which is basically that you push a blocker right under the trap, and because blockers don't get affected by traps, any normal lemming trying to go past them still will. And from there you just come the long way around and send lemmings over the top to build this last part here. One to let him get down. As you may notice, you've got 15 climbers and you have to save 15 lemmings, but you have no spare skills to create a way up past these. Or do you? Well, indeed you do. So the climbing will take care of getting up there. And this level marks the first use of my trick, which is, I don't know if it's necessarily my trick, but one I use a lot, which is using a digger to create a smooth edge for climbers. And that's how this one's done. So even if you had more climbers, you still, due to lemmings lost throughout the solution, you'd still end up saving just enough lemming. And yeah, as you notice, once he goes to an oh-noer, he's no longer a blocker, the trap can get him, and it does, so he's, no, squash. Okay, so on to level 25, Bullet Lemming, which is another cheapo remake. It's a bit harder here than it was in cheapo, so you've got almost a one of each pattern, except the one from the blockers here is jumped across to the tens digits of the builders. And obviously, as you can see, you will need a lot of builders in this level, so first trick is you build right at the edge here, and this lemming makes it back safely, even 1 pixel short, and that lemming's lost, which, since you need the bomber for the solution, you need every skill you've got here basically, so you'd end up not saving enough. So as you can see, you're not going to get the crowd out here, you can get a climber out though. And the reason you use the basher here is because you need the miner here, you need the digger near the exit. This bit here is set up so that no matter where you build from, the lemming will turn around. And as you notice, even though the lemmings are safely contained, I haven't put the release rate up. In many levels that would just be no need to do it, and here it is actually because you need to control the entering lemmings very accurately. What you want to do is you want to make it so that all but the last lemming turn around, but you want the last lemming to actually come through here. Now the climber will make his way up and come back along this path here. What you want this lemming to do is finish off this bit here so that the crowd, when they come through, don't get hit by the squasher or fall into this gap. But at the same time, you need this guy to turn around. You've also got to time it carefully with when you release the crowd here, because the time limit is very tight on this level, so if you release them too late you will run out of time. The other thing to watch out for is that if you build too early on the side, the climber will hit his head and come back and fall to his doom. If you build too late on that side, you're going to run out of time. So you dig on this side, and it all works out perfectly. And as you can see, even with that solution, which is fairly damn optimal, you have 4 seconds left. So that is another really tight on the time level. I guess bullet lemming fast as a bullet, which you've got to be to get there in time. So on to level 26, Oblivion. Repeat of Wimpy 15, and one of my most overused concepts of all time. So, I mean, not so much in the Neo-Lemmix packs, this is the only level really using that trick. I suppose Danger 5, some kind of lemming, you can use this trick, but it's far from the only way to complete that level. This one, it had back roots in regular Lemmix. Now in Neo-Lemmix, I think they're pretty much wiped out. So as you can see, you've got the diagonal setup here, which we saw in its earlier version, which makes it pretty impossible to contain lemmings using blockers. The added difficulty here is with you only being able to lose 2 lemmings, even if you did come up with some fancy setup with a blocker down here and one up here, because you don't have spare skills to get past the trap, you'd lose too many lemmings. And if you try and go through the trap and compress them here, you lose too many lemmings in the trap. So, how can you hold them all back? Well, the solution is blockers don't move. So what you do is you make every lemming a blocker. And that is how you contain the crowd in this one. There is a reason those 20 blockers are there. There isn't a reason the 20 climbers and floaters there. And from there, it's a pretty simple worker lemming level. The main challenge is just containing the crowd. And I guess releasing them afterwards, which you do by bashing back under. So yeah, this was a concept I used so many times in cheapo. Make every lemming block, solve the level, come back and bash under them. I think I had one alternate one where you bash from the left to the right. Then I had a few levels that looked like the setup but had other solutions. So yeah, that is the so-called Oblivion trick, which is, yeah, back in the cheaper days it was one of my staple tricks. Neo Lemmings, I haven't really used it so much. And heck, I probably should make a couple more levels that use some kind of variation on that trick, but yeah, so on to level 27, which is No Time to Die Part 2. Now this one was a V7 edition. Now there is no pre-V7 corresponding level to show for it because the level that was in this position was moved to Danger, not removed. So as you remember, Danger 17, which in turn replaced another level which is in pre-V7. So this one was from the cancelled sequel. It was indeed its No Time to Die level. But since it was cancelled and it was moved back, the original one now has 2 No Time to Dies. Now this one needs a lot more tricks on the execution. Now, if you thought the time limit was tight on No Time to Die Part 1, it's even tighter here. Even though the overall approach is simpler. And it's basically how it's done. So it's pretty much just made as a point of reusing that concept. So now on to level 28, which is also a level design concept that's become another staple theme of Lemmings Plus. I've even used the same 30, 100% 1, 6 minutes every time I've reused it. So as you can see, it's a repeat of 1P21, and as you may notice, 1P21 also had the same stats on the screen. The difference is whereas 1P21 was 20 of everything, this is 20 of everything except builders. So you've got the same builder heavy worker level, except now you have no builders to do it with. Of course it is possible, and I mean I don't know if it's still possible on Neo Lemmings. On original Lemmings it was even possible to do it only using bashers and diggers. So it's sort of just an obstacle course that you've got to navigate without access to builders. One thing that does have to be taken into account is that climbers will try and climb back up here, so you've got to be stopped somehow. Or in this case I think I've just not let any climbers come back this way. So one trick you can use to turn around here without builders is you block, create a turnaround and then release the blocker and they come back around. Another one you can do is just have another lemming, have one lemming dig and then another one dig on the same spot facing the other way. It's fatal fall here that you'd normally have to create a platform for. The trick is that it's exactly 1 pixel too tall and you've got a 2 pixel thing here. Once you get to here you can contain lemmings again and come up here, and then you've got this sort of mazy bit at the end, which you generally need to bring in a few more climbers for this bit. So for the end bit you can again use the same like block and then release the blocker trick. Again you can, if you prefer, use the dig bash thing here. So you can sort of, you can pretty much just see how the rest of the level plays out, but some history of this level. So it is a remake from cheapo. It was probably one of my most interesting design concepts, and basically where it came from was noticing that like in the Master System version of Lemmings, a lot of levels that were 20 of everything in the DOS version instead became 20 of everything except for 1 or 2 skills. Like Fun 11, instead of 20 of everything, it was 20 of most things, but you had no builders. In fact, I think it might have actually been 10, but the general concept's still there. Fun 14 didn't give you any floaters. And so basically my thought here was, what if you took that concept but made the skill you don't have builders? Can you create a challenging level based on that? And the answer is yes. Here's one of the most challenging levels in this pack. Not a bad level. Heck, it's a very well received level and I really like it as well, but it is one of the hardest ones in the pack. So that's basically where the idea for this level came from. Beyond that, it was pretty much just a working lemming level without builders. So on to level 29. You're probably thinking, oh well, we've got through Psycho 28 levels and we haven't seen No Salvation yet. Well, here it is. So yes, I felt the last incarnation of No Salvation was hard enough. It deserves to be near the end of the rank. Part of it is also that before it became the once per rank level, it was simply Psycho 29. So you've got 10 lemmings here, 90% to be saved. It's actually possible to save 100% on this one. And you've only got 1 minute this time. You can only use 1 lemming. You've only got 2 of each skill. So in this version, the whole come around the long way trick is not going to work anymore. So you need an alternative approach. So a digger and a basher is a good way to get them up past here. Miner and builder will avoid this trap. And then use the blocked builder to get up there. There are other ways to get up there. So basically, yeah, so I suppose it's not overly hard, but it's definitely a major step up from the previous No Salvations, which brings us to our final level, Hellfire. Now this level is copied directly from my Windows level pack, and it pretty much plays the same way. Despite that, it really suits the final level position, so it's another 2 of everything level except no diggers. So first thing is, to get out of here you want to build up and use a miner, which you then use a blocker to turn him around. The next challenge comes here. I mean, you've got 2 bashes, but you need to generally optimize, use as few skills as possible in this level. So basically what this comes down to is using like finding creative ways to use not so useful skills in order to save the more useful ones, since basically your useful skills on this level are your destructive skills, whereas your builders and permanent skills and blockers aren't so useful. I mean, they've got purposes, but they aren't really as significant. Like, it's pretty clear how to use them and you're not likely to need to conserve them. It's about using these other skills to conserve your important ones. Again here, like, you've got 2 obstacles, so you come in a bit lower and mash under both of them. And then it finishes off with yet another reverse miner. And as you can see, it's also got a bit of a time limit. It's not too bad. It's mainly because you've got a few really long destructive skills due to the conservation efforts on them. And with that out of the way, blow up your last 2 lemmings, and that is Lemmings Plus I completed, at which point it encourages you to go drink a beer. Yay for Lemmings encouraging alcoholism. Except it's not really encouraging alcoholism, it's just encouraging you to drink a beer. Not lots of beer, just a beer. And yes, it's got a special thanks to Eric Lang and CC Explore. That's for Lemmings, obviously. And the rest of Lemmings forums, just for, like, well, being an audience for the pack. Would I have still made it otherwise? Probably, because I find it pretty fun creating Lemmings levels, but yeah. So that's, yeah, Lemmings Plus I down. I shall continue this series with Lemmings Plus II at some point, but for now, that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you've enjoyed hearing my insights on my packs, maybe seeing solutions that you might not have thought of if you've found different ones these levels. And, well, have a good day.